The House will come to order. Please remain standing for the presentation of the colors presented by the Air Force Junior ROTC.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Peace and arms!
We will now have the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Master Sergeant Durga Nirola and Master Sergeant Kelton Erickson, Valkyrie Cadet Squadron.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Order! Arms! House! Other guard! Out! Ace! Forward! Right!
Members, please join me in thanking the Air Force Junior ROTC for color guard. Members, also please join me in thanking Sergeant Ron McKay for his rendition of the national anthem. Mr. Kohler, please take the roll.
Representatives Becker, Buck, Buckner, Conti, Coram, Court, Sergeant Del Grosso, Dorr, Duran, Everett, Exum, Fields, Fisher, Foote, Corporal Garcia, Lieutenant Colonel Gardner, Giroux, Janal, Hamner, Holbert, Hollinghorst, Present. Specialist Humphrey, Joshi, Kagan, Krafttharp, Labuda, Representative Labuda, Landgraf, Lawrence, Lance Corporal Lepsock, Lee, May, McCann, Corporal McLaughlin, McNulty, Melton, Mitch Bush, Moreno, Murray, Representative Murray, Navarro, Nordberg, Pabon, Peniston, Pedersen, Primavera, Priola, Captain Rankin, Rosenthal, Ryden, Sane, Present, Salazar, Representative Salazar,
Excused.
Schaefer, Scott, Singer, Sonnenberg, Stevens, Swam, Zabo, Tyler, Representative Salazar present, Vigil, Major Waller,
Here, Corey.
Williams, Wilson, Wright, yeah, Young, Speaker Ferrandino.
With 65 members present, 0 absent, 0 excused, a quorum is present. Representative Nordberg.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the reading of the Journal of Friday, January 24th, 2014 be dispensed with and that it be approved as corrected by the Chief Clerk.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. We got work to do. The motion is adopted. Members, as always, we are waiting on the Senate. So we are going to check where they are. The House will be in a brief recess. House will come back to order. Members, as we wait for the Senate, we will go to our next order of business. Third reading of bills, final passage. Members, please return to your desks. Mr. Kohler, please read the title to House Bill 1020.
House Bill 1020 by Representative Lev Sokolov, Senator Balmer, concerning the consolidation of two reports on taxable property of the county assessors submit to their boards of equalization.
Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for the adoption of House Bill 1020 on third reading and final passage.
You've heard the motion, seeing no discussion. The question before the House is the passage of House Bill 1020 on third reading and final passage. Mr. Kohler, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representatives Priola. Close the machine with 65 aye votes, 0 no votes, 0 excused, and 0 absent. House Bill 1020 is passed. Co-sponsors. Close the machine. Mr. Kohler, please read the title to House Bill 1074.
House Bill 1074 by Representatives Court and Del Grosso, also Senator Johnston, concerning payments that a nonprofit owner of a tax-exempt property may receive for reasonable expenses incurred without affecting the tax-exempt status of the property.
Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for the adoption of House Bill 1074 on third reading and final passage.
Seeing no discussion, the question before the House is the passage of House Bill 1074 on third reading and final passage. Mr. Kohler, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representatives McLaughlin, Stevens. Close the machine with 65 aye votes, 0 no votes, 0 excused, and 0 absent. House Bill 1074 is passed. Co-sponsors. Close the machine. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of House Bill 1059.
House Bill 1059 by Representative Garcia, also Senator Crowder, concerning clarifying that a ritual discharge of blank ammunition cartridges at a military funeral does not constitute the criminal offense of disorderly conduct.
Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for the adoption of House Bill 1059 on third reading and final passage.
Seeing no discussion, the question for the House is the passage of House Bill 1059 on third reading and final passage. Mr. Kohler, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representative Swam. Close the machine with 65 aye votes, 0 no votes, 0 excused, and 0 absent. House Bill 1059 is passed. Co-sponsors. Close the machine. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of the House Bill 1031.
House Bill 1031 by Representative Moreno, also Senator Hodge, concerning the weight of motor vehicles that are subject to rate regulation when being towed without the owner's consent.
Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for the adoption of House Bill 1031 on third reading and final passage.
Seeing no discussion, the question for the House is the passage of House Bill 1031 on third reading and final passage. Mr. Kohler, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representatives Dorr, Landgraf, McNulty, Rosenthal. Close the machine. With 47 aye votes, 18 no votes, 0 excused, and 0 absent, House Bill 1031 is passed. Co-sponsors. Close the machine. We are still waiting for the Senate. We can pass 4 bills in the time it takes the Senate to walk over here. As soon as the Senate arrives, we will... Oh, I see one senator. Welcome, Senator. As soon as the Senate arrives, we will be back. But until then, the House will be in recess as we wait for the Senate. The House will come back to order. Members, guests, and senators, please find your seats. Representative Ryden for tributes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today, as you can see, we have a lot of folks here who are involved in one way or another with our military, both active, reserve, veterans, families, supporters, friends. I am privileged to have Buckley Air Force Base in my district, but even if you don't have a military installation in your district, you have many, many people who are impacted by the military and have been, and I just am asking today that you reach out to those folks and let them know how much you appreciate their service. We have a few guests here today who we have created tributes for, and I just will quickly go through and let you know who they are. And first on our list is Mr. Ken Melcher. And the tribute to Ken Melcher is regarding his service since he was an active duty member of our armed forces, has been a veteran, and has been extremely involved in his community, so much so that last year the United Veterans Committee of Colorado awarded him the Lifetime Achievement Award. And he is here today with his wife, Sharon, if you'd both stand and be recognized. Thank you, members. And today we also have with us the Zonka family, who lost their son, David Zonka. He was a Marine Corporal of the 2nd Marine Special Operations Battalion who made the ultimate sacrifice while serving in Afghanistan. He perished alongside his friend and colleague, military working dog Flex. Members, his family is here today, and if you all would stand and be recognized. And wave so we can see who you are. And members, we also have with us the mother and fiance of Staff Sergeant Liam Nevins. He was with the Colorado Army National Guard, and he was with the Special Forces Group when he made the ultimate sacrifice while also serving in Afghanistan. He was part of Operation Enduring Freedom. His outstanding service to the state of Colorado and to the entire country will never be forgotten. And so, members, if you would recognize the Nevins family. And members, we have with us today Captain Reed Sundin. On April 29, 1972, Captain Reed Sundin put himself at great personal risk to save the life of a young boy in California. The boy had fallen into a raging river while fishing with his family. Captain Sundin had been fishing nearby, and as soon as he became aware of the situation, he jumped into the water, pulled the boy up the steep bank, and resuscitated him. In September 2013, after years of being unable to secure an eyewitness account of the events, Captain Sundin finally received one of the military's top honors in recognition of his courage and sacrifice. The Air Force Commendation Medal is the highest award given for saving a life in a non-combat situation. On behalf of the citizens of Colorado, the members of the Colorado House of Representatives are proud to congratulate Captain Reed Sundin for receiving the Airman's Medal and thank him for his heroic act so many years ago. And members, we have with us today a very distinguished guest who served in the Women Air Force Service Pilots, otherwise known as WASP. Many of you in the room are too young to have known about this group, but during the Second World War, the Women Air Force Service Pilots played an instrumental role in our nation's war effort. The more than 1,100 women who made up the WASP program were originally meant to simply help ease the military shortage of male pilots. But they went on to fly almost every type of military aircraft on a wide variety of missions. Their skill and determination more than matched those of their male counterparts. Yet for many years after the war, they received little, if any, national recognition. They were finally granted military status in the 1970s and were awarded the Congressional Gold Medal by President Obama in 2009. The members of the Colorado House of Representatives are proud to recognize and honor the Women Air Force Service Pilots and extend our deepest gratitude for their service and unflinching dedication to our country. And do we see Millicent here? Yes, and here is our WASP member, Millicent Smith.
We will now move to our next order of business, which is consideration of resolutions. Mr. Kohler, please read the title to HJR 1005.
House Joint Resolution 1005 by Representatives Ryden and Wright, also Senators Todd and Cadman, concerning recognition of military veterans and MIA POW Appreciation Day.
Representative Ryden.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move HJR 1005 and ask that it be read at length.
Whereas Colorado has a proud and distinguished history of dedicated military service by men and women of this state whose courage, heroism, and sacrifice preserve the liberties and democratic way of life set forth in our state and federal constitutions. And whereas Colorado benefits significantly from the presence and military service of the more than 53,000 men and women in our state who serve in the United States Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, and Coast Guard, the Branch Reserves, the Colorado National Guard, and the Civil Air Patrol. And whereas the men and women of the Colorado National Guard have served in defense of our nation and as the first military responders in support of civil authorities during domestic emergencies and are celebrating their 154th anniversary this year. And whereas in times of conflict around the globe, it is particularly appropriate to recognize the Coloradans in all branches and components of the armed services who serve around the world and to protect the security and peace of our nation and other nations. And whereas in addition to active members of the armed services, Colorado is the proud home of more than 391,000 military veterans who have served their country long and well and who bring great honor and distinction to the state. And whereas Colorado is home not only to active duty service personnel and veterans, but also to the countless family members of these men and women who display the same dedication, courage, and sacrifice. And whereas we should also never forget the sacrifices made for us by the 94 men from Colorado declared missing in action or prisoners of war while defending the principles of liberty and justice in conflicts in Korea, Laos, and Vietnam. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the House of Representatives of the 69th General Assembly of the State of Colorado, the Senate concurring herein, that we, the members of the 69th General Assembly, hereby extend our heartfelt gratitude to our state's veterans, past and present, to all military men and women currently serving in the armed services, and to the family members of active duty personnel and veterans, and that we remember and honor those prisoners of war and those missing in action from previous conflicts, and that we encourage the citizens of Colorado to join in the celebration of Colorado's Military, Veterans, and MIA POW Appreciation Day on January 27, 2014, in recognition and honor of the thousands of fellow citizens in the military who protect and serve their communities, state, and country. Be it further resolved that copies of this joint resolution be sent to President Barack Obama, Governor John Hickenlooper, Lieutenant General Michelle Johnson, Superintendent, United States Air Force Academy, Major General H. Michael Edwards, Adjutant General of Colorado, Major General Paul LaCamera, Commanding General, 4th Infantry Division in Fort Carson, Colonel Dan Wright, Commander of the 460th Space Wing, Buckley Air Force Base, Colonel James Ross, Commander, 50th Space Wing, Schriever Air Force Base, Colonel John Shaw, Commander, 21st Space Wing, Peterson Air Force Base, the Colorado Board of Veterans Affairs, the United Veterans Committee of Colorado, Mountain States Chapter Paralyzed Veterans of America, the American Legion Department of Colorado Veterans of Foreign Wars, Broomfield Veterans Memorial Museum, Wings Over the Rockies Air and Space Museum, and each member of Colorado's congressional delegation.
Representative Riden. Members and guests, please be seated.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to open the mic for fellow members who would like to express their sentiments.
Representative Wright.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good morning, colleagues. Mr. Speaker, it's a privilege this morning to mark my first time this legislative session speaking in this chamber, to be able to do so on such an important issue. Mr. Speaker, I rise this morning to help mark this day, January 27th, 2014, a day of gratitude and appreciation for the members of our United States military, our Colorado National Guard, our veterans, and those who have been missing in action and prisoners of war. I want to recognize the bravery, selflessness, and service of the so many fine men and women who have served, continue to serve, and the spouses of those who serve our great nation in an effort to protect the principles of liberty on which our country was founded. Colleagues, it is simply human nature to want to have a sense of fulfillment in our individual lives, isn't it? We want to know that we've helped better the lives of others and our own lives. And what better cause to live for? An unknown author once stated it best when they wrote, "No one is more cherished in this world than someone who lightens the burden of another." Well, good news to those that we honor today. I say to the 53,000 members of our military residing in Colorado and to the 391,000 veterans who call Colorado their home, you are most cherished for your contribution to our freedom, to our liberty, and to the safety that we all enjoy. Thank you. Colleagues, I never served in the military, but as a police officer, I believe I can safely say that I know most or many who serve in our military appreciate brevity in our comments that are limited in perhaps what may be interpreted to be platitudes and pandering by their politicians. To offer these empty forms of thanks is not our goal this morning. We are here to express our genuine appreciation and to express the graciousness of our many Colorado constituents. To do this, perhaps it is best that we express this gratitude in a form that we as politicians are not necessarily known for. By the public, we are too often known for our willingness to speak when we should listen, to not get along when getting along is precisely what the folks that we serve ask us to do. As a result, Mr. Speaker, I ask that to display our appreciation to our military members past and present, perhaps most effectively this morning, we stand together to show our appreciation through a moment of our reverent silence, our appreciation for all those who serve our state and our nation and who sacrificed or continues to sacrifice for our freedom deserve it. And Mr. Speaker, I ask for a moment of silence.
The House will observe a moment of silence.
Thank you, colleagues, and Mr. Speaker, for allowing this important moment to recognize members of our military in Colorado. Thank you.
Representative Lawrence.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to rise in support of this resolution. As many of you know, last year we passed a resolution renaming a portion of Highway 67 in Teller County between Divide and Cripple Creek the POW MIA Highway. And for any of you who were able to attend the dedication in August, it was attended by a large motorcycle rally, which has gone on for several years. And I think we always need to remember those people who were left behind, and just the love and devotion of not just their family members, but of their fellow service members. And we always need to remember the service that they gave for our country. And also for today's military, for anyone who is serving or has served, we wouldn't be where we are today without their service. And we always owe them a debt of gratitude. So I rise in full support of this resolution.
Madam Speaker Pro Tem.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker. Good morning, colleagues. I stand in strong support of House Joint Resolution 10005. It's a very special day for me because I get a chance to thank so many of the special guests that are here in honor and appreciation for your service and for your commitment and for your sacrifice. So I just came up here just to say thank you. You see, I am a product of a military family. My father enlisted in the Army, and he was able to achieve the highest rank that you can get as an enlisted soldier, as Sergeant Major. Sergeant. And so growing up, I traveled around the world. I grew up in bases in the United States and also abroad. And what I remember most about that experience is that every time we would move to a new location, my mom would make sure that every bag, every box was unpacked. She would make sure that the curtains were hung around the windows, and she would also make sure that the pictures were hung. What was difficult about being raised as a military child was saying goodbye. Saying goodbye to my dad was never an easy thing for me to do. So when he went away to Korea, I had to say goodbye, and he came back. When he went to Vietnam and he served 2 tours in Vietnam, it was hard for me to say goodbye, but I did, and he came back. What I remember most about growing up in a military family is that while my dad was away defending this country, my mom was defending her family. And so I'm just here to say thank you to Mom and Dad for teaching me courage and the meaning of sacrifice.
Representative McNulty.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, colleagues. And most importantly, thank you to the men and women serving this great country. Every year, we join together, the House and the Senate, one of the few rare occasions when the House and the Senate come together. Outside of opening day, there aren't many. That is how much this day means to us. We come down once a year, but you're asked to show up every day. You're asked to show up every day in the defense of this great nation, whether it's at home or whether you're defending the front lines of freedom abroad. We recognize the men and women who are currently serving. We recognize the men and women who have served. We recognize the men and women who have given their lives, all in one day. Any one of those things ought to take months to recognize, to remember, to honor. You show up every day. We are blessed to live in a nation where our military stands with us, where we don't have to worry day to day about the freedoms that we have because we have so many brave people who are out there defending what we do in this chamber. The disagreements that we have seem huge on a daily basis. We fight about the small stuff sometimes. We have big fights about the small stuff sometimes. We do that because the United States Armed Forces stand ready. Not asking questions, standing ready in the defense of freedom, in the defense of democracy. America is great. There ought be no question that America is unparalleled in human history. Our nation, our principles, the fact that this country was not founded on royalty, not founded on monarchy, not founded on who was the richest, but founded on a set of ideas. Founded on a set of ideas that you defend every day, the principles of liberty. Thank you. God bless you. God bless the families who are too often forgotten, but who do the bulk of the work on the home front when mom or dad is deployed. Thank you, God bless you, and thank you for allowing us these moments to recognize and appreciate your work today.
Representative Buck.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I rise in support of House Joint Resolution 141005. Last year, as you recall, it was very tough for me to keep it together as we did a memorial for Staff Sergeant Birdwell. And as a mother who is the mother of an Army Cav, Cody Buck, who serves at Fort Riley right now and is in deployment status. And there's not a day that goes by that I don't think how wonderful this country is with our strong military. And I hope that we continue to support our military in every way that we can, because we are only as strong as our military. And I just want to thank the sponsors of this bill, this resolution, and thank you.
Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of HJR 141005. Colleagues, it's we as elected officials, we do the important work of our constituents. We do serve. But there is no level of service that is comparable to the kinds of service that our men and women in uniform have given this nation for so many generations. We cannot imagine the unbelievable amount of courage and deep fortitude it must take to voluntarily put oneself in the act of pure selflessness. As an African American, I reflect deep on the hard conflict that takes place in my own veins. One soul, the descendant of black slaves, the other, the soul of a confederacy. My great-great-grandfather, Louis Damaris Prescott, who later became a post-war senator. I can only imagine the mix of fear and pride when he interrupted his law studies at the University of Paris, France, and enlisted in the Confederate Army in the state of Virginia. Returning to his home of state of Louisiana and became attached as a captain to the 2nd Louisiana Cavalry, in which he served through the war. But I wonder what he was thinking at the time. And I look back on the untold tragedy of 700,000 Americans who died in the Great War that held our Union together. I can only imagine the grit and the determination of my grandfather, Private Felix Cazenay, who served in the World War in the U.S. Army during a conflict that killed and wounded over 300,000 American lives during our country's late and very brief entrance in that war. There is not a day that goes by that I don't think about my father, Larnell Williams, who served in the U.S. Navy during World War II, and he received a Victory Medal, an American Campaign Medal, and the Asiatic Campaign Medal in what was a grueling and very long Pacific conflict. And when I think of my dad and the other sacrifices his generation made without pause, I am convinced that we would never be here if it was not for them and those who serve in the state of Colorado. Let us not forget the legendary Tuskegee Airmen, who somehow managed to protect American bombers on their way to Germany while engaged in one of the most important social fights of our history. The burden of this feeling, however, is nothing compared to the burden of the unimaginable sacrifice made on the battlefields, on the seas, and in the air by our men. And let us not forget our women in uniform. But it's what's held this country together, what's kept this nation strong, even when everything we knew was in doubt. I felt that fear as a mother when I worried, and the deep reflection of what service means when my son enlisted in the United States Air Force. I can also always be in awe of my uncles and my brothers who have served their country throughout the years. That kind of service, my colleagues, deserves its own definition. It stands on its own. This is a resolution should not be the end of the reflection to the next grand moment. Our gratitude should be expressed every day we enjoy the comforts and the freedoms of this democracy. Because this chamber, this place, this great state of Colorado, this city, these neighborhoods, these schools, the children who play in our parks, those things we buy, the vacations we take, and the cars we drive, we would have none of this, and it would not be possible if it not for their service. So those who serve in Colorado, our servicemen and women, our veterans, I want to say thank you for your service. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Waller.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, we talk a lot about sacrifice when we have Military Appreciation Day. And I think that's perfectly appropriate, and it's something that we need to do. Because let me tell you, in my years of service, I have seen a lot of people make sacrifices, whether it's deploying to a region without your family, moving your family across country, or quite simply, folks paying the ultimate sacrifice in service to their country. I've had the opportunity to view that and see that. In fact, as we talked about Veterans Day last fall, I decided to actually speak about a couple of folks that I knew that had paid the ultimate sacrifice. They didn't do it in combat. One guy, Andre Marsh, was a young troop that I had the privilege and the honor to supervise and bring up a little bit in his professional career. Andre deployed to Alaska in service to his country, away from his family. He had a baby at the time and a wife. Andre paid the ultimate sacrifice in service to his country when he lost his life in a car accident driving out to the base in horrible weather conditions. People make that ultimate sacrifice that way. Also last year, an incredibly difficult circumstance for my wife and I. When we were stationed in California, we had the privilege to work with a technical sergeant. He was an older guy at the time, coming towards the end of his career, older guy in the military. He was almost 40. His name was Lee Pershing. Lee paid the ultimate sacrifice last year in March of last year when he succumbed to the ills of Lou Gehrig's disease. Many people don't understand and realize the significance or the correlation of Lou Gehrig's disease to military members that served in the first Gulf War. The incidence of this horrible, horrible, horrible and debilitating disease is much greater in military members that served in the first Gulf War than it is in the rest of society. And Lee, paying the ultimate sacrifice, suffered with that disease for over 9 years. And I got to tell you, as I watch this progress and happen, this has to be one of the absolute worst ways to go, without a doubt. And so I'm so thankful for their service, and I'm thankful for all they did, and I'm thankful for the sacrifice. But you know what, members? It goes beyond that. Because I'm here to tell you, neither Andre nor Lee would say they did anything special. In fact, I think they would tell you, if they were here today, how thankful they were to get the opportunity to serve. That's how I feel. The military has been a part of my life now for over 20 years. It's been a part of my wife's life for her entire lifetime. My wife was born on a military installation here in Colorado, right in Denver, at Buckley Air Force Base. My kids born on military installations. I'm here to tell you, you know what? Were it not for the military and the opportunities that I've gotten, I would not be here today. I'm thankful for that. Now, maybe there are some folks in this room who are a little less thankful for me being here today than I am, and that's probably a bipartisan thought process that's going on. But I wouldn't be here today were it not for the opportunities that the military gave me. It taught me discipline, taught me how to be a leader, gave me confidence in life. Those are skills that I gained from being a young professional military officer. Taught me how to be a professional. You know, and as I've transitioned on into civilian life, the military continues, though, to give to me and my family today. You know, as I think all of you know, because I'm so proud of it and I talk about it all the time, my wife's a lieutenant colonel in the United States Air Force. And let me tell you, she's gotten opportunities that she wouldn't have had otherwise in life. Got to go to school on an ROTC scholarship. Was able to get a master's degree for free because she sat in a silo in Grand Forks, North Dakota with her finger on the button, ready to wage nuclear war at a moment's notice. The military has given a tremendous amount to her. You know, in fact, I think the military is one of the greatest equal opportunity employers in America today. Think about it. Women are promoted at a rate equal to men in their career fields. And they're not promoted because they're women. They're promoted because they've earned it, because the military gave them the tools and gave them the opportunity to be promoted at the same rate as their peers. And that's something I am so incredibly thankful for. In fact, my wife is going to be competing for promotion to full bird colonel this year, and no doubt in my mind that she will achieve that rank and that she will achieve that success because she's earned it, not for any other reason. And she's earned it, and the military has given her that chance and that opportunity to earn it. You know, so members, you know, once again, I'm here to say it is incredibly important for us to talk about and honor the sacrifices that people have made. Because let me tell you, people have made sacrifices for their country with loss of life and every other thing that we've talked about over and over and over again. But I'm here to tell you the truly great thing about the military is that I believe each and every one of those people that have made the sacrifice would do it again because of all the military has given them and all of the opportunity that the military has created. So as we're thinking about all of the sacrifice that folks have made, let's just take one chance or take one little opportunity and think about everything that the military gives back to our communities and gives to the men and women that put on the uniform every day. Thank you.
Representative Janal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of this resolution, and it's an honor and it's a privilege to stand before you today in honor of our military that's present here, also our veterans, and for the MIAs and POWs. You have fought to preserve our liberties and our freedoms, and I am from a family of veterans and active duty military. I also want to recognize the families of the military, the parents and the children who are so vitally important to those who are fighting for our freedoms. To our veterans who are not able to be with us today, I want to honor those people as well. In honor of my father, Joseph Thomas Janal, who served in the United States Navy in the South Pacific Theater in World War II, to my uncle, Edward Joseph Janalski, who was in the U.S. Army serving in England and France during World War II, to my uncle, Andrew Arthur Bondar, who was a dentist who gave up his private practice and put it aside to become an Army dentist, serving in North Africa and in Europe during World War II. They aren't with us anymore, but they are in my heart and in spirit. I also want to acknowledge my brother, Thomas Joseph Janal, Lieutenant Colonel Thomas Joseph Janal, who retired and made a career of the Army in both the United States and in Europe. To all of our military, I want to say thank you and God bless.
Representative Rankin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of the resolution. The military changed my life personally, but I'd like to acknowledge a number of people today. First, my father, who was a World War II veteran whose bars I was proud to wear many years later. My father-in-law, Marilyn Schofield, who served in the Navy and was actually had some great stories of being on a minesweeper at D-Day. My mother-in-law, who enlisted in the Navy and was a driver. But most of all, this morning, what's in my mind are the faces and names of my friends and fellow soldiers from Vietnam. Some of those names are on the wall, on that grim wall in Washington, and those are the people on my mind this morning. So I would like to especially honor them. There have been a lot of fine words said this morning about the military, and I think we all share a lot of that. So I'd like to be brief and end my little talk with a simple thank you.
Representative McCann.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I also would like to join with all the others who have spoken and so eloquently described how important the military is to our safety and our freedom here in this country. I am also an Army brat. Sounds like there are a lot of us here. My father served in World War II and then decided to make the Army a career. So he stayed in the Army, became a colonel, and I have many memories of sort of following him around wherever he got stationed, including traveling across the country. I was 3, my sister was 5, with my mother in a train to go to Seattle to then take a boat all the way across the Pacific Ocean to join him in Japan. So I think the military, many of us have memories of that sort. My father, after he completed his military service and retired, then chose to become the assistant commandant of cadets at Virginia Tech in Blacksburg, Virginia. And he continued then his work by helping young people, men and women, who were anticipating a military career, helping them become educated and also learn the values of honor and integrity, which are so important in our military, in addition to the practical training that they receive in the military. So, excuse me, I just want to thank all of those who are here and those who have sacrificed so much, particularly those who have lost young men and women. I mean, we still see in the newspaper or on television the honoring of young people. It just breaks my heart to hear about the 19, 20, 21-year-olds who are continuing to lose their lives in service of our country. So we thank you all, and we really appreciate all that you've done for us.
Representative Sain.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and good morning, colleagues and special guests. I rise in strong support of this resolution because we hold that certain things are sacred and precious. And those things that are sacred and precious are saved only by sacrifice. And our military men and women have asked to are being asked to sacrifice much for the sake of freedom. In addition, that sacrifice spans over generations. Your dedicated service, an unbroken line from our forebears in our fight for independence. For most Americans, we live in a time made safe by others. We appreciate your service, your dedication, and sacrifice. And this resolution is one of many ways that we are honored to honor you by extending our thanks and praise. Thank you so much.
Representative Primavera.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of House Joint Resolution 14-1005, and I want to thank all the veterans and organizations that are here today. I wanted to call your attention to page 3, line 12 of the resolution, to the Broomfield Veterans Memorial Museum. This is a little-known gem in our community and also in our state. It's a one-of-a-kind organization located in Broomfield, and it really means a lot to me that we have a representative, Mike Fellows, a board member, who's here today. But this is a small organization that operates on a shoestring and does a fabulous job with the many displays commemorating our valued military history and military personnel who have served our country in the many wars and military actions, sacrificing to defend our freedom. and they honor our veterans every single day. So if you get a chance to come to Broomfield and visit the museum, or if, better yet, if you get a chance to donate to the museum, I'm sure Mike Fellows would appreciate that, and thank you for being here today.
Representative Landgraf.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is my distinct honor to be able to represent Fort Carson, and that is especially important to me because, like so many people in here, there has not been a day of my life that I was not associated with the military. I would like to recognize my father, Leslie Argabright, who spent 30 years in the Navy, serving in World War II and Korea. My husband, Jim Landgraf, who spent 26 years in the Army, serving 3 tours of duty in Vietnam, and my brother-in-law, Jerry Landgraf, who was a Night Stalker and served in all the places that we don't talk about, and unfortunately, he did not come home. It's just been an honor to be associated with the military. I often feel sorry and kind of bewildered at how people survive who aren't associated with it, and I'm sure that all of the men and women in this room who are serving now know what I mean. Like, where do you shop? But it's been a pleasure. It's a pleasure to represent Fort Carson, and I thank you for your service from the bottom of my heart.
Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker Pro Tem, and I rise in strong support of this resolution and really want to thank all of our men and women in uniform, current and past, for their service, and also, as everyone said, the family members who also sacrifice. They might not be on the front lines, but they are the ones who are home waiting for those phone calls, worried and hoping the best for their loved ones. And they sacrifice just as much as everyone else. And I never served in the military, but I remember growing up, the flag that was in our house from my grandfather who served in World War II. And I remember when I was about 12 being on my dad's shoulders at the World War II memorial, etching my cousin's name off the memorial, who died about 2 days before he was supposed to return from Vietnam. And so a lot of my family members have served, and I know how that impacted both my dad, and I never got to meet my grandfather. Actually, he died a couple years before before I was born, and I know my grandfather through his pictures of him in his uniform in England when he was fighting in World War II as a navigator. And I remember all of his medals that he got, and looking at those as a kid, and my dad explaining to me what those meant. And how proud my father was of my grandfather. And that had a huge impact on me, and such admiration for the men and women who serve. And I wasn't able to serve partly because as a gay man during that time I wasn't able to be honest about who I was and be someone who could serve. But now, thanks to the change in the policy, we have many openly gay and lesbian people who are serving as well in our armed forces. And I am proud that we've changed that policy and be able to be honest about who they are. And lastly, I do want to acknowledge a lot of you know my daughter, Lila, but what you don't know about is who she's named after. She's named after her grandmother, Greg's grandmother, and she served, and I'm trying to get the facts right. She was in Wisconsin. She was taught by Earl Whitman to fly, who was actually taught by Orville Wright of how to fly. And she was in, I'm pretty sure, Civil Air Patrol and possibly in the WASP. And it's amazing just that history of women early in our years where they didn't have all the same opportunities to be able to be there. And Lila carries on that little legacy of women being able to be part of our military. And I really am proud to have the WASP here today and to recognize them for all their service, and really want to thank everyone for their support for this resolution.
Representative Rosenthal.
Thank you, Madam Speaker Pro Tem, and I rise in very strong support of this resolution, House Joint Resolution 1005. And I wanted to thank all of the active duty service members who are here today, all the veterans who are here today. I'd also like to thank the members of my own family who served with distinction over the years. My Uncle Morris, who's still with us, and he served in Italy during World War II, and he still has nightmares from his service in Italy. And I think that's a message that we also need to consider and think about, is many service members still serve. And even though they may be retired, they're still fighting the wars and the battles in their minds. And we need to think of that and remember them, that they are still doing that. And I'm thinking of my Uncle Abe, who also served in South Pacific during World War II. And he also still is in pain every day, 24/7. Sometimes he can't sleep, sometimes he can't stand, sometimes he can't lie down, he can't sit sometimes, and it's all because of the wounds he suffered. And I think of my Uncle Sam, who served in South Pacific. I think of my dad, who was active duty and then became a civilian working for the military. And I also echo the sentiment of many, having been a military brat living overseas in Italy, Belgium, and Germany. And I think of my brother Brian, who's now working at the VA, who's retired Air Force for over 20 years, to thank him for serving in the Gulf Wars. And so thank you, Madam Speaker Pro Tem, and thank you all the members who served in the military. Have a great day.
It's okay. She's the one who recognized you. Is there any other House members who would like to speak on this resolution? Seeing none, the House will stand in recess so we can hear from our Senate colleagues. Senator Crowder.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also stand in support of Resolution 1005. I'm a veteran myself, and what you have on an annual basis, what we have at American Legion of VFW, we have an annual ceremony for MIA POW, and at this ceremony, what we do is light a candle for their homecoming. It's incumbent upon us all to not forget the MIA's POWs, especially those that have served. Those of us who have returned from areas in which conflicts have existed are duty-bound to make sure nobody forgets the veteran, the POWs. There's an excess of 50,000 veterans who, at this point in time, through all of our conflicts, are POWs. We need to continue searching for them. We need to continue making sure the families those are affected by that are answered. And, we should, like I say, we're duty-bound not to forget our comrades in arms. But one thing about this country here, we pick one day a year to have this celebration. When we start putting as much discussion into the current events of what our military is currently facing, rather than highway closures back east or snow removal back east, then we will get somewhere. But from this, the veterans understand what I say about do not forget POWs, MIAs. And I think the message should be strong, it should be on a daily basis, and it should be set forth to everybody. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and it's an honor to be before you. This is my 10th year of being able to honor Military Day, and it's so fun to see familiar faces and so many of you that have been here every year that I have been here. This is a special day. It's a day to stop, reflect, and to recognize. There are none of us that can truly experience what a person who has either served, currently is serving, or who has had a supreme sacrifice. We can say we can relate to, but we cannot really feel because every person's individual experience is different. I want to thank those who have served, who are currently serving, to the families of those members who are serving and who have served, to the survivors who gave that supreme sacrifice. I especially think of the Gold Star wives and families that every day are reminded of who's not at the table with them anymore. And those are days that sometimes are grim, and some days are long, and sometimes are very heartfelt.
And so those are times that we need to continue to be sensitive to and recognize what that loss continues to mean in their lives. I also want to support this resolution and thank the defense and the preparedness that we face every day through our guardsmen and our reservists. My husband, Colonel Terry Todd, taught me so much of what it meant to serve and to every day be prepared. I remember after he would teach all day and then coach and then go to reserve meetings and then summer camps, and the students would say to him, "Colonel, are you still doing that military thing?" What a great model he was for so many of those young people who didn't have an experience and know what that military thing really was and what it continues to be. We must never forget how to continue teaching our young people about the importance of freedom, that it isn't just something that is an entitlement, but it is something that is given. It is a great gift. And we need to continue to teach our children about the history of this great nation and why we are as strong as we are. So when we talk about Military Day, it's one day out of the year. It's not just waving a flag. It's not just saluting, but it is about a continuous pledge to serving and making sure that we are there when our service members return home, and that we are there for our families of service members every day when they need their snow shoveled or they need any other things that are facing them. It's an honor to be here today. Thank you, Representative Wyden, for taking the lead on Military Day. I salute all of you who have served, and to your families, and I ask that God bless America and that we continue to keep our nation strong through a sense of preparedness and defense every day. Thank you.
Senator Grantham.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I had not planned to come up, just mostly because I didn't know if I was going to be able to make my voice last through the end of this. But Senator Cadman gave me an article this morning that really kind of reminded me why this has become one of my favorite days down here at the Capitol. Just the reminder to each and every one of us of those who have gone before us that have given so much. There's one conflict in particular that really speaks to me personally as far as our family involvement goes, and that's the nature of this article that Senator Cadman gave to me. It was in this weekend's Wall Street Journal. It's called "How the Doughboys Beat the Kaiser." And it's a good article about our involvement and how we were drawn in. It reminds us that actually this year marks the 100th anniversary of our entry into World War I, or actually the beginning of World War I. Our entry does not take place until 3 years after that, in 1917. But it is a reminder as to the nature of that war, the uniqueness of that war, and the submarine warfare, that unrestricted submarine warfare that drew us in to World War I. It's also a reminder to us of the petty European squabbles that sometimes drew us into these things, and especially in that case where even with the entry of the mighty United States into the war, the German Kaiser says, "I do not care." He even blustered on that even if the Americans did declare war on Germany, they were just a bunch of cowboys with an army barely worthy of the name. What use would these weaklings be against Germany's legions? The speed and strength of the U.S. war effort wasn't a surprise, though, only to the Kaiser, as it would turn out. It was one of the great strategic surprises of the 20th century. In April of 17, the U.S. had enormous industrial strength, some of which had been supplying the Allies with weapons and goods since 1914, and a powerful blue water navy, but the U.S. Army was, by European standards, pitiful. Not quite 140,000 men. But with astonishing speed, the War Department began creating a new army from scratch to take on the Germans. Men were drafted, volunteers enlisted in unprecedented numbers. Germany had underestimated not only America's material superiority, but also its courage and determination to win. By the spring of 1918, there were only 287,000 U.S. combat troops were in France. But that summer of 18, the number soared as thousands of U.S. doughboys completed their training and crossed the Atlantic. By August, the U.S. First Army had been created, some 500,000 men strong. German observers, many of whom had assumed that it would take years before Washington could deploy even a handful of divisions, were stunned. One German commander, Crown Prince Ruprecht of Bavaria, lamented, "The Americans are multiplying in a way we never dreamt of." Enough Americans were finally on the Western Front to make a major contribution to the last battles of the war. That war raged on for 3 years without American involvement, and once America got involved, in less than 2 years, about a year and a half later, Germany surrendered. This was a unique war. Sometimes it gets forgotten in our talks about the wars that we've been involved with, and certainly on the grander scheme of things and the scope of the war, World War II certainly was much larger and is more recent in our memory, and many of our veterans are still alive at this time that served in that war. World War II is passing quickly into, World War I is passing quickly into memory and into the history books. It was just 3 years ago that the last surviving American veteran of World War I passed away, Frank Buckles in West Virginia. It was a unique conflict for America because it was the first one that really took place on another continent and not within our own borders or on our own soil. It was unique in its use of technology, such as tanks, submarines, aircraft, things we take for granted now. But this was the first war to really employ those new tactics. It also employed the new tactics such as trench warfare. It was also unique in the caliber and the quality of the young men that served in that conflict, especially those from right here in Colorado. Men such as Captain Frederick Libby, who didn't wait for the actual official entry of the nation into the war, but instead enlisted in the Royal Flying Corps of the United Kingdom. Men such as Captain Jerry Vasconcelos, who became Colorado's first flying ace, flying in the U.S. Air Corps. Men such as Second Lieutenant Francis Lowry, who died on his 33rd mission and posthumously received the Distinguished Service Cross. Many great Coloradans served in this war and should be remembered. Men such as Frank Buckles in West Virginia, William Fitzsimmons, as well as many young cowboys and farmers across all of Colorado that served in this conflict, including one particular farmer down from the Two Buttes area who happened to wear this helmet, this doughboy helmet. A man by the name of E.H. Grantham, my grandfather, served in France. He was mustered into service and then inducted into the Army at Fort Logan in Denver in March of 1918. For each of these Colorado heroes, as well as the nearly 43,000 men and women that Colorado contributed to the war effort of World War I, and for the 1,091 Colorado heroes who made that ultimate sacrifice during this conflict, and because of their service, I thank you guys for this resolution, and I ask for your support in it.
Senator Renfro.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is the first time I've come down to speak on Military Day, and I guess when you reach your end of your term with term limits, you step back and look a little more, or reminisce, or I don't know what it is, but look at the bigger picture of things, and I want to say thank you. You know, this day truly does mean a lot, and it is special to come and hear the stories, hear about members and their family and their past. And so I truly want to say thank you to the military, thank you to members of this body who your families have served and the sacrifice that you've had for our country and given for our country. But I also want to talk to the 100 members and tell you, I guess, or ask you to remember this day when some of you go on to a different office, especially a higher office. And let's not hold our military as a political hostage. Let's support them all the time. This happens on both sides of the aisle. Our military is too sacred to be used that way, and unfortunately it is used that way. And we get them involved within our aisles. And we need to stop tying their hands behind their back and support them and pray for them and give them the tools they need, and then thank them. We do a good job of thanking them for the past, but we need to thank them for the future, because that's truly what they're here for, is the future. Thank you for that. It's not easy to not know what you're going to do tomorrow, what you're going to have to do tomorrow for us. And your families think about that probably every day. And I just want to say thank you, and God bless you.
Senator Marble.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I come before you today and rise in support of this resolution. I come to you as the daughter of a Navy captain transport in the Pacific during World War II, as the niece of a bombardier navigator over Germany, and as the mother of a Marine Sergeant Combat Unit Machine Gun Line Company. I know that many of you have experienced war. I know that many of you have also seen deployments of your loved one and being told, get your passports in order. We expect high casualties and lots of wounded. Looking at the people sending off their sons, their daughters, their husbands, their wives, looking at them and trying to smile through tears, knowing that some will have a very different homecoming. During those deployment times, the phone becomes your best friend, and every car that drives up your driveway, you look and see if it has any resemblance to a military van. When you are a Marine mom, you are a mother to every Marine, and it is the greatest honor that I have ever had. I can't say enough about our military, just the word military. What does that mean to you? What does that exude? To me, it means freedom, strength, honor, courage, commitment, dedication. And it also means loss. To all you who have lost during the time of war, and even those who have returned from war and the war continues, we all understand, and we all have great respect for everything you have done. Military families are every family in the United States, because we could not be who we are without you. I want to thank you so very much for everything you have done and will continue to do. Thank you.
Senator Herpin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's a great honor for me to stand before this body as a Navy and Air Force veteran. We enjoy many freedoms in this great nation. Those freedoms were acquired and are protected by those citizens who have answered their nation's call to serve in our armed forces. From the very beginning of our nation, a nation conceived in liberty, to this present day, our men and women have stepped up to defend those liberties, often paying the ultimate sacrifice. My own military service began in 1965 when I enlisted in the United States Navy. I served on the USS Simon Bolivar, a nuclear-powered Polaris submarine. After being selected for a Navy program which allowed me to attend the University of Kansas, and upon graduation receiving my commission, I returned to submarine duty with the USS John Marshall and the USS Robert E. Lee, 3 of the 41 for Freedom submarines. As an aside, the U.S. Navy is building a new fast attack submarine that will be named the USS Colorado, SSN 788. This is a great honor for our state. Upon completion of my tour on Robert E. Lee, I transferred to the U.S. Air Force and was assigned to Colorado Springs. I retired from military service in 1985. While submarine duty is considered hazardous duty, it was nothing compared to what my peers went through in Vietnam. I would especially like to remember my wife's cousin, U.S. Army Warrant Officer Stephen Tronrud, who introduced me to my wife. Steve was a helicopter pilot in Vietnam and lost his life serving our nation. His name is on that black granite Vietnam Memorial Wall in our nation's capital, along with over 58,000 others who died in that war. We did not do a very good job of welcoming back those veterans who sacrificed much for our nation in this conflict. I would like to add my personal thank you to those Vietnam veterans who are with us here today. To our currently serving military members here and throughout the world, including my son-in-law, Navy Chief Petty Officer Joshua DeBerger, currently serving with VFA 25, a Navy fighter squadron, thank you, be safe, Godspeed. Thank you, Mr. President.
Is there any further senator who would like to speak? Seeing none, the House will come back to order. Any further discussion? Seeing none, is there any objection to taking a voice vote on HJR 1005? Seeing none, we'll proceed in that manner. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. HJR 1005 is passed. Representative Riden.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I move that the current roll call be added as co-sponsors to this resolution.
Seeing no objection, the current roll call will be made the roll call for the co-sponsors for HJR 1005. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the House proceed out of order to consider HJR 1007 and HJR 1008 in that order.
Seeing no objection, the House proceed out of order and take up HJR 1007. Mr. Kohler, please read the title to HJR 1007.
House Joint Resolution 1007 by Representatives Garcia and Navarro, also Senators Ulibarri and Rivera, concerning the USS Pueblo.
Representative Garcia or Navarro? Representative Garcia.
Mr. Speaker, I move HJR 1007 and ask to be read at length.
Whereas the USS Pueblo was originally launched as a United States Army cargo ship in 1944, but was transferred to the United States Navy and renamed the USS Pueblo in 1966. And whereas the USS Pueblo was named for the city of Pueblo, Colorado, and the county of Pueblo, Colorado, and was the third ship in the naval fleet to bear the name Pueblo. And whereas after leaving Japan in early January 1968 on an intelligence mission, the USS Pueblo was attacked by the North Korean military on January 23, 1968. And whereas according to United States naval authorities and the crew of the USS Pueblo, the ship was in international waters at the time of the attack. And whereas one crew member of the USS Pueblo was killed during the attack, and 80 crew members and 2 civilian oceanographers were captured and held for 11 months by the North Korean government. And whereas this year marks the 46th anniversary of North Korea's attack on the USS Pueblo and her crew. And whereas the USS Pueblo is still in commission in the United States Navy but continues to be held by the North Korean government and is currently a museum in Pyongyang, North Korea, now therefore be it resolved by the House of Representatives of the 69th General Assembly of the State of Colorado, the Senate concurring herein, that we, the members of the General Assembly, recognize the bravery and sacrifice of the crew of the USS Pueblo, and that we take pride in the fact that the USS Pueblo bears the name of a city and a county in Colorado, And therefore, the citizens of Colorado should be aware of the incident that occurred with the USS Pueblo 46 years ago, and that we continue the call for Kim Jong-un and the North Korean government to return the USS Pueblo to the people of the United States, and that we hereby designate January 23rd each year as USS Pueblo Day as a day to remember and honor the brave crew of the USS Pueblo. Be it further resolved that copies of this joint resolution be sent to President Barack Obama, Governor John W. Hickenlooper, President Pro Tempore of the United States Senate Patrick Leahy, Speaker of the United States House of Representatives John Boehner, and the members of Colorado's congressional delegation.
Representative Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Members, guests, please be seated.
Members, as a United States Marine who served as a mortuary affairs specialist in 2003 in Iraq, it gives me great pride and honor today to bring to you this resolution, not only for the USS Pueblo, but also for the one Marine who was killed and the 82 crew members who were serving aboard the USS Pueblo when it was attacked and captured while in international waters. See, the USS Pueblo is the only U.S. Navy ship to be held by a foreign government today. The USS Pueblo is named after a city and county that we hold in high regard in the state of Colorado. It's named after Pueblo, Colorado, the home of heroes. And regardless if you served in the Army, the Air Force, the Coast Guard, the Marine Corps, or the Navy, one thing we can say is we are all taught to never forget and to leave no one behind. Today, members of the General Assembly, I ask you in joining us in remembering that the USS Pueblo does belong to the United States of America. It belongs to the citizens of the United States of America, and it belongs to our community, Pueblo.
Representative Navarro.
Thank you. And members, as we gather today to remember all of our military service, I would like to especially remember those that were involved in the USS Pueblo, and again, urge that we return this back to the United States of America where it belongs. So thank you for joining us in this resolution.
Seeing no other House members, we will stand in a brief recess to hear from senators. Oh. I'm sorry, we'll come back. House is back in order.
Thank you.
Sorry, Representative Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I appreciate your indulgence and the indulgence of my colleagues. Members, this will be the 8th time I have voted on this resolution. And I thank the members of our delegation from the House and the Senate from the City of Pueblo and Pueblo County for sponsoring this resolution every year. I will tell you that the first several times I voted on this resolution, while I felt strongly about it, I often sort of raised an eyebrow and said, well, we'll send this to the President of the United States and it will not be heard. But as many of you know who served here with our colleague Representative Swerdfiger, this resolution was cause for him to receive a postcard from North Korea. And I have a new view and respect for this resolution because there are those in what is a brutal, inhumane, and totalitarian regime do listen. And while I am sometimes hesitant as a state government body to make pronouncements on international relations issues, this one does seem appropriate. And when we have celebrity citizens who would describe Kim Jong-un as a good guy, it is important that we, a body that represents average citizens, we as citizen legislators, let that regime know that while its people starve so that it can remain in power and build a nuclear program that threatens world peace and order, we hear and know and understand the plight of the North Korean people. I think I speak for my colleagues who sponsor this resolution to say that we have no illusions that the people of North Korea, who live daily in fear and bondage, will hear our message. But we know from our experience that the regime has heard this message and hopefully will hear it again. And that message is, as we ask for the return of the USS Pueblo, which was taken in international waters, that the U.S. wishes for peace. But we will stand for freedom. I do not wish to sound or appear bellicose, because as you have heard this morning and will hear further, the burdens are heavy, the sacrifice is great. But our young men and women and their leaders understand that this is not simply a question of returning a ship that rightfully belongs to us, but it is a message to a regime that threatens peace and order in Asia and across the globe. So let this resolution be a message that we wish for peace. We wish the very best for the people of North Korea, but we will stand for freedom. We are resolved, and as we make this request as a body, on behalf of our friends and citizens and colleagues from the city of Pueblo and Pueblo County, and indeed for the entire United States Navy and the people of America, that we will continue in our resolve. Do not question our resolve for peace and freedom in the world. Thank you.
Is there any further House member who would like to speak? Seeing none, the House will stand in a brief recess. Senator Rivera.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As Representative Garcia stated, Pueblo is the home of heroes. We have 4 Medal of Honor recipients that call Pueblo home: Carl Sitter, Raymond Jerry Murphy, William Crawford, and Drew Dix. And I would say that all members of the crew of the USS Pueblo, were heroes in their actions on that day and throughout their confinement. Going back to the Veterans Appreciation Day and referring back to that, if it's possible, I'd like to call your attention to the Pueblo Veterans Ritual Team standing at the back of the chamber, who make it their duty to attend ritual ceremonies for retired and active military that have passed away. Truly a calling that is an extreme sacrifice, no doubt. And we talked about how to honor our veterans and our active duty. And I say it's something that is not terribly hard. You know, it comes to just teaching your children and your grandchildren how great it is to live in this, the greatest nation in the world. Teaching them things like the Pledge of Allegiance, the Star-Spangled Banner, and the tune to the same. Teaching them the words, we believe, and we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. Teaching them the value of being a citizen, a good citizen, who respects their friends respects their neighbors, and asking them to follow in the footsteps of those, and when possible, enter and enlist in the military, so that this country and this government of the people, for the people, and by the people will not perish. And therefore, I too support this resolution to return the USS Pueblo. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Is there any further senators who would like to speak on this resolution? Seeing none, the House will come back to order. Is there anyone who would like to speak on this resolution? Seeing none, is there any objection to taking a voice vote? Seeing none, we'll proceed in that manner. All those in favor of HJR 1007, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. HJR 1007 is passed. Representative Garcia.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the current roll call be added as co-sponsors to HJR 1007.
Seeing no objection, the current roll call will be made the co-sponsors of HJR 1007. Mr. Kohler, please read the title to HJR 1008.
House Joint Resolution 1008 by Representatives Exum and Stevens, also Senators Nicholson and Roberts, concerning the Colorado National Guard and in connection therewith, honoring Guard members for their firefighting and flood recovery efforts.
Representative Exum.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move HJR 1008 and ask to be read at length.
Whereas, since 1860, the men and women of the Colorado Army National Guard and Air National Guard have served our country in wartime and peace, always ready, always there, as the first military responders to domestic emergencies affecting our communities, this state, and the nation. And whereas the frequency and severity of wildfires and floods in Colorado are increasing, and when such natural disasters occur in Colorado, members of the Colorado Army National Guard and Air National Guard are frequently called upon to assist civil authorities in firefighting and flood recovery efforts. And whereas members of the Colorado Army National Guard and Air National Guard have been called upon to assist firefighting efforts at many fires across the state, including the Hyde Park Fire in Larimer County, the Waldo Canyon Fire in El Paso County, the Fern Lake Fire in Larimer County, the Black Forest Fire in El Paso County, the East Peak Fire in Huerfano County, the Lime Gulch Fire in Jefferson County, and the West Fork Fire Complex in southern Colorado. And whereas on June 11, 2013, 14 soldiers of the Colorado Army National Guard's 1157th Engineer Firefighter Company joined more than 120 other members of the Colorado Army National Guard and Air National Guard who were assisting civil authorities with firefighting support at the Black Forest Fire in El Paso County. And whereas on June 22, 2013, 75 members of the Colorado National Guard mobilized to fight the ongoing fire activity in Colorado, and 15 members of the Colorado Army National Guard's 157th Infantry Battalion joined an interagency Type 2 hand crew and deployed to the East Peak Fire in Huerfano County and spent 5 days securing the line on this fire. And whereas on September 12, 2013, the Colorado National Guard launched Operation Centennial Raging Waters to assist the Colorado communities devastated by flooding. And whereas in the subsequent weeks, 980 members of the Colorado National Guard conducted air and ground search and rescue missions, sandbagging operations, and security checkpoints. And whereas the Colorado National Guard succeeded in evacuating 3,233 people and 1,300 pets in need of rescue. Now therefore be it resolved by the House of Representatives of the 69th General Assembly of the State of Colorado, the Senate concurring herein, that we, the members of the Colorado General Assembly, commend the men and women of the Colorado National Guard who have tirelessly assisted civil authorities with wildfire suppression and flood support, extend our deep gratitude to the brave and admirable service of the Colorado National Guard, and affirm that the Colorado National Guard fulfills its motto of always ready, always there. Be it further resolved that copies of this joint resolution be sent to Governor John Hickenlooper, Major General H. Michael Edwards, the Adjutant General for Colorado, Brigadier General Peter Byrne, Director of Joint Staff, Michael Hunt, Deputy Executive Director, Colorado Department of Military and Veterans Affairs, General Frank J. Grass, Chief of the National Guard Bureau, and Paul Cook, Director of the Colorado Division of Fire Prevention and Control.
Representative Exum.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Fellow members, it's my absolute pleasure and honor to sponsor this resolution with Representative Stevens and the Senate sponsors, Senator Nicholson and Senator Roberts, to honor our Colorado National Guard. You know, when I think of some of the most recent national disasters in our state has been through for the last few years this unimaginable loss and the property and the few lives that were lost. I'm deeply saddened, as I know many of you are as well. But I'm also reminded that the brave men and women of our Colorado National Guard who have sacrificed so completely of themselves in order to help our friends and our neighbors through what must be, for many of them, the most challenging times of their lives. During particularly the Waldo Canyon fire, at the beginning stages, I was out knocking on doors, and some of the constituents in my district asked me, what should they do? And I simply told them, I said, pay attention, follow instructions, and help your neighbor if you can. And that's what the Colorado National Guard did. The Colorado Air National Guard and the Army National Guard have time and time again helped protect our state and protect the citizens of our state from overwhelming devastation of wildfires and floods, helping victims secure their homes, rebuild their cities, and find some measure of peace when it may seem that all else is lost. The Colorado National Guard deserves our deepest admiration and appreciation for all they do and will continue to do. And for that, I'm very proud to carry this token of appreciation and sincerely ask for your yes vote. Thank you.
Representative Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, members. Of course, I rise in strong support for House Joint Resolution 1008. Being a member, or Black Forest being in my district, I really do want to thank our National Guard. You know, we were on evacuation notice, and when you're on an evac notice, you find out very quickly what's important to you. I'd never been on an evacuation notice, and so in a very short amount of time, my husband and I had the opportunity to say, what really matters? What are we going to take between his little truck, you know, and my SUV? What are we going to pack up in here, and what are we going to do? And I do have to say, it's a sobering moment. Actually, in terms of emergency preparedness now, we have the area of our house ready to go. You know, of course, amidst terrible things, sometimes you find out really do what matters. But I want to thank you because the efforts of you and our firefighters in terms of getting people out was tremendous. And also, we did lose 2 citizens in Black Forest. And that's very tragic. And the heat was overwhelming. And when the National Guard or your local police or your sheriff comes to your door and says, get out now, they mean get out now. That's one thing I know that Colorado Springs and the Black Forest has learned about this, is that there is no time to waste. It is get out now. So I want to just take a moment today to really thank you, because it is a huge and tremendous risk. My neighbor, who's only in his early 20s, he's a firefighter, and I will tell you this, that it's a huge risk in times like this. And I would sit with his mother and say, just let's pray that a crown of fire isn't around them, because as you know through our wildfires, when that happens, you're trapped. And I will tell you that National Guard provides that strength, they provide the leadership, and they really provide the professionalism that we need in those hours. And so I want to thank you. I want to thank all the members of our National Guard for their just heroic service during these wildfires. Thank you.
Representative Singer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And in deference to my great uncle who served in World War II and approached the beaches of Normandy when he actually received a higher rank and actually didn't have to serve in the infantry, actually was assigned to originally sit on a back desk and work in the accounting unit. He said, basically a short sentence, he said, I'd rather work outside. And he lost his leg on Normandy, and all he ever said about that event was, I'd just rather work outside. And so I'll try to be brief in my thanks for the National Guard. But when the fires and floods hit Colorado, We lost a lot. And one of my residents, one of my constituents, Mr. Schrader, said, we lost a lot, but we also gained something. And to paraphrase him, we gained the knowledge that there are people out there that have our back. Through the thousands of residents, over 2,000 in Lyons, both two-footed and four-footed alike, that were split into 6 different islands in the town of Lyons, to the people in Longmont, in Niwot, in Allens Park, who were all cut off from each other. We knew we had a lifeline with the National Guard. And saying goodbye to those folks that came out from Kansas, other parts of Colorado, Utah and Montana, who were just overjoyed and thrilled to be able to know that so many people appreciated what they did. And the knowledge that they would come back here in a better time and visit and enjoy our mountains and our rivers where they're supposed to be. It was amazing to see everyone come out. And when the governor said at the State of the State, Colorado does not shut down, those words would have rung hollow if it were not for the National Guard and the Army Corps and CDOT and everybody that stood together to replace those hundreds of miles of roads and bridges here in Colorado. In fact, members, if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be surprised if today we would still be standing here shaking our heads, wondering when we would rebuild those roads and bridges. It's a shock and a surprise, but it doesn't come as a shock and a surprise after meeting so many members of the National Guard. There's a saying we have in Lyons, and you'll see on the back of my desk, I have a bumper sticker there. There's a saying in Lyons now, it's called "We've got grit." It's both literal and figurative. But the truth of the matter is we'd probably have neither without the National Guard's intervention. And in closing, I will repeat the words that were repeated when we wished all our National Guard members farewell at LifeBridge Christian Church in Lyons, or excuse me, in Longmont not long ago. Thank you for building us a road home.
Representative Giroux.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Colleagues, I know Representative Wright started the morning out by saying that we should be brief and that well, I just want you to know, all of the visitors that are with us today, brief is not something we do really well, but heartfelt thanks are truly here. So to think that any one of the individuals that came down here and spoke did not mean so sincerely, I just want you to know that we really, really do, and we really appreciate you. And General, thank you for what the National Guard does. The Joint Budget Committee sits down with them every year, and we talk about what their initiatives are, what they want to do, what they plan on doing. And in my district, I've lost 3 constituents to wildfires, and I lost. There was damage because of the flood. Highway 72 into Boulder was lost, and it's now reopened. Thank goodness. Thank you very much. But as members, I think it's important for us to remember, out of the $9 billion budget that we have, the Military and Veterans Affairs budget is less than $8 million. So I think they remind me a lot of the Agriculture Department. They do a whole lot with very little, and they do it with heart. And thank you very much.
Representative Foote.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thanks to those of you that brought House Joint Resolution 1008. I absolutely support it. The one thing that stuck out in my mind in the text was the motto of the National Guard: always ready, always there. And I know we all hear our fair share of mottos and slogans throughout time, and some resonate more than others, some seem more accurate than others, but as a motto goes for the National Guard, always ready, always there, is 100% accurate. And we saw that in particular when it came to the floods in September of last year. They were there for us during the evacuation. You heard in the resolution that they evacuated over 3,000 people. And you may or may not know that was the largest air evacuation in the United States since Hurricane Katrina. And they were there, and they were there for us. They were there during the aftermath as well to help guide folks back to their property and their homes, to help maintain order, help the local authorities maintain order, and make sure that we were doing the best that we could to start recovering as quickly as we could. And they were there during the initial recovery. You heard Representative Singer already referenced some of their work on the roads, in particular Highway 36 between Lyons and Estes Park. The governor announced somewhere at the end of September, I don't remember the exact day, that all the roads or the state roads would be reopened by December the 1st. And I remember thinking that that was an optimistic goal. I was hoping that we would be able to achieve it, but having been in the areas that were affected and having seen it firsthand, and of course the photos that you all are seeing here as well, thinking that there was going to be some major obstacles to get some of those roads reopened in time. Some of those roads just weren't there anymore. They weren't just potholes that need to be repaired. They were gone. And of course, CDOT was in the lead, and the National Guard was helping not only Colorado, but from Utah and from Kansas. They were helping, and help they did. As a matter of fact, when it came to Highway 36, not only did they open it by December 1st, they opened it by November the 1st, a month early, about 7 weeks after work got started. That's 42 days to repair that road. And it was an amazing job. It was amazing teamwork, and they should be thanked for that among all the other things that you're hearing them thanked for today. Again, Representative Singer referenced the dinner that was at the LifeBridge Church in Longmont. This was right around the time that the announcement was made. As a matter of fact, the announcement was made that night that 36 was going to be reopened. And I was struck by the sense of pride that the National Guard members had in the work that they did, and rightfully so, because it was a job that was extremely well done. And it was really only matched by the pride that we all had in the National Guard and the work that they were doing and how they were helping us. And I tried my best to go around to shake the hands of all the National Guard members from Colorado and the other states to say thank you. Unfortunately, I didn't get to everybody, but I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank everybody else that I didn't get a chance to thank personally there. We really do appreciate all of your work, and we really appreciate you always being ready and always being there.
Representative Buck.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I rise in support of this wonderful resolution. I represent Larimer County, which includes the Estes Park and the Glen Haven area, and I can't thank you enough to the National Guard for all that they have done, because I do believe in my heart they did went above and beyond the call of duty, and just extremely grateful, and thank you so much, and may God bless all of you.
Representative Sonnenberg.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As we honor those in the National Guard and the work they did, I think it's important to note that our National Guard are our homegrown heroes. Those that live and work in our communities, those that actually were in the floods and the fire and yet left those jobs at a moment's notice to jump in a truck, to jump in a helicopter, to help save others. We all have seen the video in the flood of the National Guard pulling the lady from the car and the emergency personnel that saved those people. I think it's important that we note that those are people that live and thrive and work in our communities. So with that, thank you, Major General Edwards, for leading that charge, for the training you do and your staff does to prepare those homegrown heroes for the work that they have no idea is coming in front of them. Nobody can anticipate those floods, the fire, their ability to respond. I thank you and the National Guard for the work that you do and honor you. Thank you, members.
Is there any other House members who would like to speak on this resolution? Seeing none, the House will stand in a brief recess. Senator Nicholson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. After the September flood and soon after the reopening of the Coal Creek Canyon Road, I was meeting with a group of the Coal Creek Canyon community who were victims of the flood. And one of the women said to me, I was on the wrong side of the creek. I was trapped and was unable to get over to the highway and safety because my driveway was washed out. The National Guard rescued me with a zip line. I was so frightened when I went across the zip line, across the creek, and to the highway to safety, that I thanked them, but I forgot to ask their names so that I could formally thank them for saving me. She asked me if I ever had an opportunity to please formally thank them for saving her. So please accept this as a very formal thank you from her and all the victims of the flood that you so bravely protected, and all of the victims of the wildfires that you so beautifully protected as well. She told me that you are her heroes, and you are our heroes as well.
Senator Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Senator Nicholson said it so well. I'd also like to add the thanks formally and publicly on behalf of the first responders that the Colorado National Guard helps. In the medical world, they talk about physician extenders. Well, in the wildfire and flood world, our National Guard is our extenders. You help bring order out of chaos at a time where it is truly traumatic. As one who has been through the wildfire situation and evacuation, like Representative Stevens was talking about, it goes to your very core. It is the smell of smoke, the threat to your family, your property, your pets even, really strikes a very human instinct of fear. And I think the Colorado National Guard, knowing you're out there, you're helping us, you're helping our local responders, is so tremendously important. I also wanted to say that Director Paul Cook in our wildfire committee was very, very intent that we have the public recognition of what the Colorado National Guard has provided for the state of Colorado. So again, I'd just like to give my very deep thanks for it, because you are also obviously stepping into harm's way, and you do it for us. So thank you.
Senator Lundberg.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I'll be brief, but as the senator for the mountainous areas of Larimer County and really much of the areas that were devastated by the floods in Larimer as well, I would be remiss if I did not very publicly state the thanks on behalf of the people of Larimer County for all of the efforts by all of the emergency responders. But, you know, in particular, and this is why I rise in support of this resolution, the Colorado National Guard is that backbone of support that we enjoy, and probably far too often without really thinking about what it takes. When fires and floods and other disasters strike this state, there's not panic, there's call the National Guard. I remember some years ago when there was a devastating tornado in Windsor. Again, it was the National Guard that was there to take care of all of the details that are so necessary in such a professional fashion. And I too stand here again on behalf of the people of my district in Larimer County, thank the Guard, thank General Edwards, and all of your support staff for your diligent work, your professional attitude, and your compassion. Thank you.
Senator Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm piling on here, I know, but the work the National Guard did both in fires and floods is so important. And in the case of Longmont, I remember watching on TV, you know, I was near Coal Creek. We could hear the waters. We were lucky, but they weren't lucky in Longmont and Lyons and up in the mountains. And so on Friday, I went from Louisville to Longmont, which is usually like a 20-minute drive, and it took about an hour going zigging, zagging, finding the bridges that were still in that the State Patrol told me were there. And I went to two evacuation centers, and one was at Lifebridge Church. And remember those great big personnel carriers with the great big tires you saw on TV? Well, that's what I saw in person. I'd been seeing them on TV, and there they were, and people from Lyons being dropped off in Longmont, meeting friends and family to pick them up, some less fortunate, they had places for them as well. And just kind of the relief of getting that part of that tough time over for them. And it was the National Guard doing that. It's the only way you could get into Lyons was on these big personnel carriers. Also, the helicopters, they evacuated a middle or elementary school that was up at Calwood Educational Center by Ward. Hauled those kids out. I saw some video online of that. And I talked to a woman who'd been evacuated from Lyons, and her son told her that the flood was totally worth it because they got a ride on a Chinook helicopter. And she told her son not to go tell the neighbors who were downhill by the creek and it had major damage, anything like that. But it was indicative of how good a job they did and how much people appreciated it, that they could get out safely. And I think this is probably the 12th time I've thanked the Guard folks, but I very much appreciate all the work that you did, both in evacuating people and fixing roads and getting us back on our feet. We still have a long way to go. I don't want anybody in the legislature to think we don't. But that time, the Guard rose to the occasion, and I appreciate it very much, and I'm sure all Coloradans do.
Senator Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I don't think any Colorado citizens are more grateful than the citizens of my district, Senate District 9, which over the last 2 summers has gone through Waldo Canyon and the Black Forest fire. It's a little bit different from the flooding, but what remains the same is the team response of not just our state and local first responders, but the National Guard from Colorado and from other states, and the federal active duty people who work with the Guard, work with the state of Colorado as a team. Now there's something about the DNA of the Colorado National Guard that I'd like to talk about. First of all, absolutely, thank you. But I hope you hear on the radio, there's a great Guard recruiting commercial going on right now of a young Guardsman who's called into the Armory, and she said, well, I didn't know what I was here for, but they said, we're going to go out and save the lives of our neighbors today, or something similar to that. That's the DNA of the National Guard. We have a volunteer force, especially in our own state, to do those missions. It's interesting that before statehood, back, I think they said maybe the Guard started in 1860, but in 1861 they got that call and formed the, I guess it's first Colorado Cavalry. You can go out and see the soldier out there, and people come to Colorado, they say, well, you know, the Civil War, you got to be kidding me. We had Coloradans in the Civil War. Well, what I've heard, and I think this is true, I haven't researched it myself, but before statehood, if Colorado had been a state, we would have had a larger percentage of our population serving in the Civil War than any other state. That's very interesting. Of course, we did a pretty good job. We went to New Mexico and we kicked those Texans back down the Rio Grande River, which is also part of our DNA. We're not going to lose one like that. One thing I would like to mention, though, that is also part of the Guard's DNA, and General Edwards and our Air Guard members know this very intimately, is that while these emergencies were going on in Colorado, the Colorado Guard deployed overseas to do national missions simultaneously. Now, if you've ever seen the movie Patton, Patton goes into the war room and all the, they're saying, oh my gosh, what's happening? There's going to be a German breakthrough at Bastogne. And they go around the room, and the British and the Free French and whoever, they're all saying, well, not much we can do about this. We've got the 101st Airborne there. They're cut off. They're holding out. But Patton says, well, I can have 3 divisions there in 24 hours. Well, interestingly, the Colorado National Guard has our forces deployed around the world. And I think right now, I think we have 87 this year in Afghanistan, 4 in Kuwait. We're one of very few states that has 2 partnership programs with 2 different countries around the world, in Slovenia and in a country I'm very familiar with in Jordan, because on active duty I helped set up that exercise program, which and sold them a couple squadrons of F-16s also. And you know, we deployed the Guard squadron from Buckley during a time when everybody in the world was saying, what are we going to do about Syria? Should we invade? Should we not invade? Should we send assistance or whatever? But one thing was clear, was that we had to contain the situation. And on the northern border of Jordan, during a critical period of time, the Colorado National Guard served there to make sure that that crisis in the Middle East did not escalate further than the border of Syria. So this is still one of those Patton moments where you say, you know, what am I going to do in the next 24 hours? And our guardsmen have the training, they have the equipment, they have the support, and they have the volunteers, well trained. And I don't say that lightly, because volunteers, some people think, well, that doesn't mean professional. These are unpaid professionals, or in some cases paid professionals when they get activated, but they are really there because they want to be there. So they're volunteers in the best sense of the word. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Is there any additional senators who would like to speak on this resolution? Seeing none, the House will come back to order. Is there any other representatives who would like to discuss this resolution? Seeing none, is there objection to taking a voice vote? Seeing none, we'll proceed in that matter. All those in favor of HJR 1008, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. HJR 1008 is adopted. Representative Exum.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the current roll call of the House be added as co-sponsors to HJR 14-1008.
Seeing no objection, the current roll call will be made the co-sponsors of HJR 1008. Mr. Kohler, please read the title to HJR 1006.
House Joint Resolution 1006 by Representatives Melton and Landgraf, also Senators Heath and Balmer, concerning recognition of military personnel from Colorado who have served in Operation New Dawn and Operation Enduring Freedom and in the global war on terrorism, and honoring those who have died while serving their country in Iraq, Afghanistan, and elsewhere around the world.
Representative Melton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move HJR 14-1006 and ask to be read at length.
Whereas thousands of military personnel from Colorado have served in Afghanistan in Operation Enduring Freedom, in Iraq in Operation New Dawn, and in the global war on terrorism, including troops based at Fort Carson, the United States Air Force Academy, Peterson Air Force Base, and Buckley Air Force Base, members of the Colorado National Guard, Army Reserve, and Marine Corps Reserve, and troops from Colorado who are deployed with military units based in other states. And whereas, since January 2013, the following soldiers based at Fort Carson, Colorado, made the ultimate sacrifice while serving their country in Operation Enduring Freedom. Specialist Ember Marie Alt, 21, of Beach Island, South Carolina, a member of the United States Army assigned to the 32nd Transportation Company, 68th Combat Sustainment Support Battalion, 43rd Sustainment Brigade, 4th Infantry Division. Staff Sergeant Joshua James Bowden, 28, of Villa Rica, Georgia, a member of the United States Army assigned to the 748th Ordnance Company, 242nd Ordnance Battalion, 71st Ordnance Group. Specialist Robert Wayne Ellis, 21, of Kennewick, Washington, a member of the United States Army assigned to the 32nd Transportation Company, 68th Combat Sustainment Support Battalion, 43rd Sustainment Brigade, 4th Infantry Division. Specialist Charles Patrick McClure, 21, of Stratford, Oklahoma, a member of the United States Army assigned to Battery A, 4th Battalion, 42nd Field Artillery Regiment, 1st Brigade Combat Team, 4th Infantry Division. Sergeant William Robert Moody, 30, of Burleson, Texas, a member of the United States Army assigned to the 32nd Transportation Company, 68th Combat Sustainment Support Battalion, 43rd Sustainment Brigade, 4th Infantry Division. Staff Sergeant Patrick Howard Quinn, 26, of Quarryville, Pennsylvania, a member of the United States Army assigned to Company C, 3rd Battalion, 10th Special Forces Group. Staff Sergeant Joe Abraham Nunez Rodriguez, 29, of Pasadena, Texas, a member of the United States Army, assigned to the 32nd Transportation Company, 68th Combat Sustainment Support Battalion, 43rd Sustainment Brigade, 4th Infantry Division. Specialist Trinidad Santiago Jr., 25, of San Diego, California, a member of the United States Army assigned to Battery A, 4th Battalion, 42nd Field Artillery Regiment, 1st Brigade Combat Team, 4th Infantry Division. And Staff Sergeant Mark Henry Schoenhoven, 38, of Plainwell, Michigan, a member of the United States Army assigned to the 32nd Transportation Company, 68th Combat Sustainment Support Battalion, 43rd Sustainment Brigade, 4th Infantry Division. And whereas since January 2013, the following United States Armed Forces members who called Colorado home, but who were stationed elsewhere around the nation and the world, made the ultimate sacrifice while serving their country. Staff Sergeant Liam Jules Nevins, 32, of Denver, a member of the United States Army assigned to Company B, 5th Battalion, 19th Special Forces Group, based at Fort Carson, Colorado, while serving as part of Operation Enduring Freedom. Specialist Rob Lee Nichols, 24, of Colorado Springs, a member of the United States Army, assigned to Company B, 3rd Battalion, 15th Infantry Regiment, 4th Infantry Brigade Combat Team, 3rd Infantry Division, based at Fort Stewart, Georgia, while serving as part of Operation Enduring Freedom. And Corporal David Michael Sonka, 23, of Parker, a member of the United States Marine Corps assigned to 2nd Marine Special Operations Battalion, based at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, while serving as part of Operation Enduring Freedom. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the House of Representatives of the 69th General Assembly of the State of Colorado, the Senate concurring herein, that we, the members of the 69th General Assembly of the State of Colorado, remember and honor these and all Coloradans who have given their lives in service to their country in Operation New Dawn, Operation Enduring Freedom, and in the global war on terrorism, express our sympathy to the families and friends of those service members who have died, and honor the service, dedication, and valor of all military personnel from Colorado who have served and are currently serving in Iraq and Afghanistan and in the global war on terrorism.
Representative Melton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and members and guests, please have a seat. Today, we remember and honor the courageous men and women that came from Colorado and paid the ultimate sacrifice for their community. As I look at this list of men and women, I am truly humbled by their dedication to serve our country. These are sons and daughters, mothers and fathers, sisters and brothers, husbands and wives, friends and loved ones. You know, when members were coming down earlier and kind of remembering and talking about their family members, I got to think about mine. I had two grandfathers that served in the United States Army, Lynn Melton and William Henry Phillips, as well as an aunt, Darlene Melton, and an uncle, Gary Phillips, that served in the military. And I know that had they been missing from our family unit, that would be a large piece of our family gone. Unfortunately, the members that were just read, the people that were just read, their names just read across, their families are hurting as well. Their families are hurting because of that loss, that sacrifice that was paid by these brave and courageous men and women. The families of our fallen soldiers continue to pay for that sacrifice. And so today, as we honor them, I hope that we can give them some comfort and our appreciation for all that their family members have done for our country. And I'm sure that Representative Landgraf shares in my sentiments, but I hope that one day, soon, that list gets shorter and shorter, and that we don't have to do this resolution as a part of the day of Military Appreciation Day. Until that day happens, though, we do express our tremendous appreciation, and we again wish their families tremendous comfort in this time.
Representative Landgraf.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in support of Resolution 1006 and to pay homage to those who gave their lives in service to their country and to all the families and friends of those they left behind. It was just brought to my attention that one captain was left off the list, and that's David Lyons of Peterson Air Force Base, who was killed in active duty. As of November 23rd, Fort Carson has had 349 soldiers killed in action and an unknown amount of wounded. In addition to that, we have 300 deployed to Kandahar and 4,300 in Kuwait. We also have another division preparing to leave. And to all those men and women, to the friends, the families of the departed, we say God bless. And to those who are serving, please hurry home. Thank you.
Representative Swan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, it's a pleasure and an honor to be able to speak to you this morning. This is the 8th time that I've heard these resolutions. And, you know, they're always very meaningful. I remember one year, I was standing back in the corner, and they rang a bell every time they read off the name of one of our servicemen that was killed. And that was a powerful time down here for me. And these are very powerful resolutions. But something occurred to me today, especially as Representative Rosenthal spoke. He reminded us of the terrible price that we pay for these wars in terms of blood, and he didn't mention this, but also treasure. And Representative Melton also said he hopes that these lists of KIAs, killed in actions, get shorter very quickly, and I share that hope. And Representative McCann said something similar about every one of these is a tragedy. And I think sometimes I fear that we plunge into these wars without sufficient thought given to the possible consequences, the inevitable consequences in terms of blood and treasure that our country is going to pay, the long list that we've already heard of. And one thing I hope we get out of these military appreciation days is that we really need to be thoughtful and deliberate about what we're doing in terms of engaging in foreign conflicts. And I can't thank the members of our military enough who we have an all-volunteer force. Can't thank them enough for what they do and their willingness to stand in harm's way. But I think as members of this democracy, we need to remember that we have a say in this through Congress. And I think that we need to be very thoughtful and deliberate before we become involved in wars that put our fellow citizens at risk. So again, thank you so much for this entire day. Representative Wyden, the other people who organize it. I appreciate this resolution. Thank you.
Is there any further House members who would like to speak on the resolution? Representative Landgraf? If it's the amendment, let's do that after the senators speak. The House will stand in a brief recess. Senator Heath, Senator Balmer. Senator Balmer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, members, I remember when I served in Afghanistan, we had ceremonies on the tarmac in Kandahar. We had ceremonies where we stood at attention and the chaplain would say a prayer. And after the chaplain finished, sometimes we just stood there in silence. And then the taps were played, and then they were loaded on the C-17s. Those were some of the saddest moments in my life, and I remember them all the time. I hope that you have had the opportunity to attend a military funeral. I've attended a number of them. I think it's important that you look into the eyes of a mother. You will experience her abject sorrow. Imagine the mother's heart. Go back about 20 years, because most of these soldiers that are killed are 19, 20, 21, 22 years old. So you go back 2 decades, and that mother was delivering that little boy in the delivery room at a hospital. The father was holding the little baby boy, very proud day, and all the way through their life, they've held that precious child. Hugged that little boy after he has a nightmare, went to the school plays and clapped, taught the little boy how to play sports, how to open the door for his prom date, and everything that they could possibly do and hope for in their life, they invested in their little boy. And now I want you to think about the going away of the troops. I can tell you that the longest hugs at the going away ceremony, if you don't know, is where the families have the service members, they say goodbye. And then they get on to usually a C-5 and fly to Germany, and then from Germany they fly usually on a C-17. But at the going away ceremonies, there are young wives, young husbands that hug their loved ones, but the longest hugs, by far the longest hugs, are always the mothers. And the mothers will hold their sons for 1 or 2 minutes, many times. And then their son or daughter leaves, and they start praying, and they start worrying. And there's not a day that goes by that they don't lose sleep worrying and praying for their son. And as then they have the horrible, horrible, horrible doorbell ring where they're notified. And then it's a pretty frenzied pace. The military has casualty assistance officers who help escort the body from Dover Air Force Base, which is where they come in. And the men and women at Dover Air Force Base do extraordinary work. They meticulously research the soldiers' medals and honors, and they make sure that the uniform they put on that soldier is exactly the uniform that he or she is entitled to wear, and that is the uniform that the soldier is buried in. When you go to the military funeral, you will see the mother. If it's the mother that's going to be presented the flag, if it's a son, if he's married, then it's going to be presented to his wife. The officer or NCO, it's usually an officer, the ones that I've seen, goes down on one knee to present the flag to the mother. And he says, on behalf of the President of the United States, the Secretary of the Army, and a grateful nation, please accept this flag as a symbol of our appreciation. And so we've gone from the mother's giving birth to the mother's long 1-minute hug to all the sleepless nights, and now she's holding a flag. She will never get over it. For the rest of her life, she will experience sorrow. What does that flag mean? It means a lot of things, not just to us here in America, but to freedom-loving people all over the world. I remember during my deployment to Bosnia back in 1996, we were in a village where the Serbs and the Croats had been fighting each other bitterly. And we had been there for about 2 weeks as peacekeepers in the zone of separation, 4-mile zone of separation between the two warring factions. And I remember a Croatian woman said something to us, and I didn't understand what she said, so the translator told me, and she said that she slept well last night because the Americans are here and we're safe now. And it was kind of a feeling of pride, but also just, wow, we really represent something that is much bigger than we realize. For a lot of people in the world, freedom is just the absence of war. Peace is just the absence of war. What about freedom here in the United States? What does it mean? Well, the next time you have a meeting and you exercise your constitutional right of freedom of association, I would ask you to please remember the sorrow of the mother's heart. The next time you attend church or synagogue, please remember the sorrow of that mother's heart. Next time you do a press interview, please remember the sorrow of that mother's heart. Freedom is such a big thing, we really can't comprehend what it means to each person. But I can tell you that each family member who has lost a soldier understands freedom and the profound sacrifices involved in freedom on a much deeper level than any of us will truly know. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Senate Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, I don't know about you, but I have sat here all morning with a knot in my stomach, goosebumps. It is undoubtedly the most intense day of our 120 days, for me anyway. My guess is for many, many of you. I think I'm the oldest member of the General Assembly. And just go back in memory a little bit. I grew up as a young boy in Baltimore, Maryland. We had blackouts virtually every night. I can remember having an air raid warden would go around the neighborhood to make sure there were no lights shining from any of our homes. Going with my mom during rationing and waiting to get a quarter of a pound of butter. Collecting little cards from a bread company, if you can imagine, with all the pictures of all the airplanes that were being flown in those days and all the ships, and putting them in a little booklet. I can remember the day that my very little best friend, playmate, when we were 5, learning that his father's merchant marine ship, of which he was the captain, was torpedoed off the eastern shore of Maryland. Unfortunately, he came back. I can remember the euphoria when the war ended and the huge celebrations. And then I can remember what seemed like the next day that we were involved in the Korean War. And so many of my friends' fathers we're back at war. I can remember debating when I was a high school student whether we should cross in Korea, whether we should cross the Yalu River and go into mainland China and liberate northern Korea and also carry the war into the Chinese mainland because they were supporting the northern Koreans. I can remember enrolling at the University of Wisconsin and going immediately into ROTC. Why? Because all young males did that. Because we didn't have a volunteer army. And let me just editorialize here for a moment. Old school. I wish we still didn't have the volunteer army. I think it would be well for everyone to serve. I can remember being commissioned in 1959 and serving on active duty from 1961 to 1970 and being blessed by not going to Vietnam, but being with, in the 8th Infantry Division, people who went to Vietnam on a regular basis, our aviation company, most of whom did not come back. And unfortunately, from 1970 till today, we have a list, like was just read, of those that didn't come back. I hope it's not too much to ask of all of us to just take a moment and think what it would mean to have peace in this world, so that we didn't have to read ever again a list of those that didn't come back. Mr. Speaker, I would respectfully ask for a moment of silence for all of us to just think about what it would mean to have peace in this world and never again to have to read a list of those who didn't come back.
The House will observe a moment of silence. Thank you, Senator Heath.
Thank you.
Senator Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And members, it was not my intention to come back up here, but I noticed there was a slight error on the resolution, and we're drafting an amendment to that. So I think we have it ready, but I'll waste just a couple more minutes of your time. This Christmas was a little different for our family because we drove up to North Dakota, Minot Air Force Base, North Dakota, which is, any way you go, the wind's a blizzard and blows right in your face. And my daughter, who just turned 19, this summer married an airman who is working on intercontinental ballistic missiles up at Minot Air Force Base. After she knew my history flying B-52s in northern Michigan, I don't know why she would do that, but they're happy and having a great time. But on a 14-hour drive in both directions, we got to listening to some books on tape, and this time we chose Bill O'Reilly's Killing Lincoln, which is a great book. And then I actually did a whole course on Abraham Lincoln's speeches. The one that comes to mind today is the Gettysburg Address. And as Senator Todd can probably tell you, when we're teaching young kids, we come to the line that says, they will never long remember what we said here, but they will remember what they did here. And then everybody laughs because we think, well, Abraham Lincoln must have proved himself wrong, right? Because that's the one speech a lot of people remember from elementary school. I think what he meant was that he wished they wouldn't remember his words. These are hard resolutions. The president was dedicating a cemetery and concluded that the brave men, living and dead, can dedicate, consecrate, and hallow the ground far beyond our means to add or detract. He was not being political. He was trying to step back, I think, from the situation and use a slogan we use in the military: just let your deeds and your actions speak for themselves. Captain David Lyon is the name of the that we're adding to the resolution, I hope in a few minutes. He was a graduate of the Air Force Academy in 2008. He was designated by All-American organizations for his prowess. He was truly an All-American in track and field. Held records for the shot put, indoor and outdoor. He was what we would imagine as Captain America. He was assigned to Peterson Air Force Base in the 21st Logistics Squadron, and his wife, also an Academy graduate, Dana Lyon, was deployed with him to Afghanistan this year. As you know, it's I've told you before, it's, I guess, one of the regrets I have from being in the military is the number of people that I have known and lost as friends, colleagues. And this is one of those circumstances. And as President Lincoln recognized, it's hard. The Lyons, both captains, spent Christmas together. And then on the 27th, 2 days later, David Lyons was killed leading a convoy of Afghan commandos, special forces, to resupply their lines in an act that was unnecessary and quite deliberate by the Taliban, since they tweeted about it as they were doing it. I personally know about this because a good friend of mine at my church, who I work with on Sunday mornings, was house sitting for them because they were both deployed, and found out almost immediately after the event that they were actually trying to get a hold of Dana Lyons. He probably found out before she did, in a way, because they were trying to find her to get back to Bagram Air Force Base to meet David's body and to return him back to the United States. He was buried on January 8th, and I think this might be why we might have missed this. This happened just this month, and we lost one of our own. So I thank you for your time, and as the amendment comes forward, I would ask you to vote yes on the amendment.
Are there any further senators who would like to speak? Seeing none, the House will come back to order. Representative Landgraf.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move amendment L001 and ask that it be displayed.
Properly displayed. Mr. Kohler, can you read in honor of those who've lost their lives?
Amend re-engrossed resolution, page 3, after line 12, insert, whereas in December 2013, Captain David Lyon, 32, of Sandpoint, Idaho, a member of the United States Air Force assigned to the 21st Logistics Readiness Squadron, based at Peterson Air Force Base, made the ultimate sacrifice while serving as part of Operation Enduring Freedom. Page 3, after line 16, insert Staff Sergeant Caleb Michael Medley, 26, of Burlington, a member of the United States Marines, assigned to 1st Reconnaissance Battalion, based at Camp Pendleton, California.
Representative Landgraf.
I ask for a yes vote.
Is there any objection to taking a voice vote? Seeing none, we'll proceed in that manner. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Amendment L001 is adopted. We are back to the resolution. If there's no further discussion, question before the House. Is there any objection to taking a voice vote? Seeing none, we'll proceed in that manner. The question before the House is the adoption of HJR 1006 as amended. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. HJR 1006 as amended is adopted. Representative Melton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask the current roll call be added as co-sponsors.
Seeing no objection, the current roll call will be made the co-sponsors of HJR 1006. Representative Bryden. Representative Ryan for introductions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And members, while we've been having our resolutions, another member of the WASP women has arrived, and her name is Kay Gunderson. Please welcome her.
Representative Ryan, please continue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I believe he may still be here. Our former Representative Joe Rice from now with Lockheed Martin, and want to welcome former Representative Rice and also remind you all that Lockheed is doing a really wonderful partnership with the Colorado Department of Labor and Employment, where they are training veterans as aerospace electronics technicians. The program began last fall and has graduated 2 classes of veterans, while a 3rd class is currently undergoing training. And we just want to thank them for their work in partnering with the state and continuing to honor and hire our veterans. Thank you.
Members, also please join me in thanking Staff Sergeant Lance Christensen, 101st Army Band, Colorado National Guard, for playing taps. Thank you, Representative Ryden, and thank you to all our armed services members and families here with us and veterans. We really thank you for your service. With that, the House will stand in recess so members can welcome all of our guests. The House will come back to order. Madam Majority Leader, for announcement.
There aren't any announcements?
Do you want to tell people about committees?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Members, please pay attention for your committees.
Because we are slightly delayed recessing today, the committees will be moved back to a start time of 2 p.m. 2 p.m. for committees.
Okay. Announcements and introductions. Representative Representative Kraft-Tharp, thank you. Just call your first name. And Madam Assistant Minority Leader, do you want people's?
Oh, they're here with me.
Okay.
Okay.
Please.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, if I could just have a moment of your time. I would
hold on
like...
one sec, Representative Kraft-Tharp. Members, can we have your attention at the well, please, for 1 second? Thank
Members, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, Representative Primavera, Representative Zabel, and I would like to ask you for your thoughts and your prayers for the students at Stanley Lake High School, for the victim and his family, and for the Stanley Lake community today. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Kraft-Tharp. Further announcements and introductions. Okay. Representative Mitch Bush.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I feel sort of poorly having gone after an announcement of much more gravity than this. There is a tourism industry reception this evening from 5:30 to 7:30 at the Brown Palace for the Colorado tourism industries. Thank you.
Members, the House will be in recess. Your committee is at 2 o'clock. You do not need to be back today. We'll see you tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Good luck in committees. The House is in recess.